Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Grimflayer, and I have a question for you. Are you tired of taking all the turns? No? Well, that's good to hear, because neither am I. Let's take all of the turns yet again, if we can. So we're here, we're on the play, and we have a very good hand. I have mentioned before that 3 lands is kind of the platonic ideal for a deck like this, but 2 lands and a serum is just as good in terms of finding your land drops, and in fact is a little bit better on average because it can filter away the bad draws off the top. We have a Mine Effect, we have good interaction, we have Snapcaster Mage. Love the hand, we're going to keep it. Our opponent keeps 7 as well, so we're going to lead right off with a serum. We're going to draw Part the Water Veil, that's quite bad. And we have 2 good cards on top, but we really want to see more land drops, and we really do not want a second Snapcaster Mage this early, and we don't want the exhaustion even really without knowing what we're up against. So we have to bottom both of those, and we're going to pass. Darksteel Citadel, Mox Opal, and pass. Okay. This could be a few different things, all of the usual Tier 1 artifact deck suspects. Honestly, the fact that any of them didn't show us a turn 1 play besides the Opal is quite good for our chances in a match like this. We don't have anything particularly compelling to do, so we're going to pass. Opponent plays another Citadel, okay. Bomat Courier. Interesting, I assume they just ripped this off the top. Sure. Courier resolves. Now, we don't care that much about this card. You've seen me, if you've watched my earlier matches, we've played against cards like Courser of Krufix and Panza. We've played against Dark Confidant and Abzan, and now we're against Bomat Courier here. These are all some nice grindy cards in their respective decks that we do not care very much about at all, because we are not trying to compete on that axis. We're not trying to deny them resources. In fact, we are going to be giving them excess resources. We're going to try to deny them the windows in which to play them. So while we don't really care about this Bomat Courier, this is clearly some kind of an aggro deck, and we are, you know, if it's any kind of the traditional Affinity builds, they have almost everything else is going to be evasive. It's going to be a fast deck, a fast clock potentially, even though they have not started particularly fast. So for all of those reasons, I think we want to try to use Snapcaster as the old Ambush Viper here and take a trade while the trade is available. So before blocks, we'll flash in the Snapcaster. And our opponent's going to take him off the table with a Galvanic Blast. Okay, fair enough. So we're going to get hit, and we're going to go to our turn. We draw another Dictate. Not great. We shouldn't need or really want more than 1 Mine Effect this game, and except maybe when we're really deep in the turns, in which case, So we've just got to pass here. Fortunately, we're still not under much pressure, so the fact that we're getting some kind of poor top decks is actually going to work out just fine for the moment. Inkmoth Nexus. Thoughtcast. Okay. So this is a more grindy Affinity build. They have Bomat Courier and they have Thoughtcast. This is definitely good news for us compared to a traditional Affinity build. Now, worth noting quickly that traditional Affinity is slowly but steadily getting its meta share eaten into by the Hardened Scales or Modular Affinity deck. So I don't know how much of this is just a grindy build or how much of this is becoming stock, where traditional Affinity is kind of trying to find or rediscover or reassert its identity in the format. I don't know, I'm not quite on top of that, but either way, they're going to get a 1 mana draw too. That's pretty good. Ornithopter, yes. Ornithopter, yes. Mismatching Ornithopters. Tisk, tisk. Courier gets in for 1. We don't care. Okay. End step will flash in the dictate. Let's see what it gives us. Oh boy. Yet another mine effect. Well, 2 mine effects really if you count the ancestral as one. These are kind of the last cards we want to see. We really wanted to land there, obviously. We also want more interaction above all. Now, once again, you know, our opponent didn't really add to the board. They're grinding well. They've refilled their hand a bit. They've got some Ornithopters, which really need some help to be effective. So we're kind of dodging some bullets here. We're both having a really slow but value-oriented to the late game progression. So what do we do here? Do we hold up mana for Dictate, or do we just use this opportunity to resolve Ancestral Vision, which kind of prices us into playing Howling Mine? So at this point, it's kind of a toss-up. I'm inclined to get a little bit aggressive here. I'm thinking that Cryptic Command and Giga Drowse, some combination of those, can get us really, really safe behind our shield. So I just want to deploy as much value as possible this turn. So we're going to go ahead, suspend Ancestral, play the Howling Mine, go totally shields down for a turn, see what the opponent can do to us. They're going to draw 3. Feels a little scary. They find a Blink Moth. In Soul Artifact. Okay, so once again, I'm going to put that under the category of I don't know if this is a little bit experimental or if this is something that's starting to become stock in Affinity lists. They replace their Mox Opal. Vault Scourge, okay. Board is certainly getting big. Another Vault Scourge, sure. So they're going to crack in, put us to 12. We've got our Ancestral Vision ticking down. And we finally find our 4th land. I say finally, you know. Missing a land drop does happen. It's not the end of the world. It definitely is not good in this deck, but I don't wanna complain unduly. Yeah, so the plan of staying safe behind the Cryptic and Giga Drowse shields is still what we are banking on. We will pass. No need to get really aggressive with a upkeep Giga Drowse or anything like that. We're just ready to see what the opponent shows us before they move to attacks. They've got a Blink Moth. And they're going to play a Grafted War Gear. Okay. Sure. That's going to beef up a Vault Scourge or an Ornithopter, and yep, they're going for the Lifelinker. Makes sense. Alright, then they animate the Nexus in the main phase. Now that's a little bit of a mistake from the opponent, but to be fair to them, I don't know why, but a lot of people that I've encountered are a little bit surprised to see Cryptic Command in a Taking Turns deck. You know, if they're at all familiar with the archetype, they might not say, okay, I have to play around Giga Drowse and Exhaustion, but when they see those cards, they're like, oh yeah, these are the backbone of the Taking Turns interaction. I think I would be suspicious for Cryptic too, but a lot of people don't seem to be. So, regardless, the opponent did not sequence around the Cryptic Command, and now we get to tap down their entire team and draw a card. To be fair to the opponent, what did they miss out on? Just a Blink Moth attack? Not a big deal, but still worth noting. Little bit of a tilt because we find the Temporal Mastery off of that, but you know, that happens a lot. Gotta get used to that in this deck. The miracles are worth it, I promise. Ticking down to 2, and we find a Time Warp. Life is good. You see how often we just have to survive till turn 5, and then we find a Time Warp and life is good? That is why it's a 4 of. So, obviously, we just play it. We tick down the Vision. We find a Part the Water Veil. Beautiful. So here, no need to get too fancy. We have another Part the Water Veil as an eventual win con in hand, so we're quite free to just play a land, play a Part the Water Veil without awakening, and go again. Believe we just discarded our remand there. Again, it's not very effective against their deck in general, plus the concerns I've raised before about, when we're at this stage of the game, we don't want to be that reactive. We don't want to hold up counter magic. We want to hold up Giga Drowse and Cryptic Command, but not Cryptic for countering things mostly. It's for the tap down, or we want to tap out ourselves. So that's why we picked the remand there. Ancestral comes off suspend and finds us a miracle. What a beautiful find. Yes, we would like to cast a turn spell for 2 mana. Seems pretty good. Play a land. We're going to exhaust our opponent. No need to bother Giga Drowsing down their Mox Opal or anything. What could they have? A Galvanic Blast at worst. It's not going to kill our Awakened land. Mox Opal will untap for the exhaustion anyway, so we just move to discard. Get rid of a couple things we don't need. And at this point, we've basically got it. There's the Temporal Mastery. We'll go again. We're going to play our land. And yep, we're just going to awaken the Nexus, go again. Play another land. We're going to show them another turn spell. We're going to show them the infect damage. Okay. We're going to discard. And now our opponent concedes. They realize it is lethal. It's not the most intuitive thing in the world, strangely. A lot of people don't get that right away. Anyway, pretty lucky to get away with that dirtily of a progression against Affinity. Again, our opponent is on a more grindy build of Affinity where they have equipment, they have Thoughtcast, they have Ensoul Artifact, they have Bomat Courier. They don't seem to be going all out on trying to race the opposition, which is a good thing for us in terms of how the matchup plays out. That said, we still kind of needed to hit that Time Warp on curve. Who knows what could have happened if we didn't. We are still giving them 3 cards per turn. Definitely not ideal against any variant of Affinity. So, Time Warp coming through in the clutch there, and our deck kind of, we saw a little bit of everything. So, nice matchup. We're going to move on to the sideboard here and see what we want to change. Alright folks, we are here to sideboard against Affinity, and worth keeping in mind, it is a grindier, more card advantage oriented build of Affinity we're facing. Might not change what we do, but worth keeping in mind. So let's make a couple piles here. We're going to do it this way. We have the definites, which is Ceremonious Rejection is a definite. Pretty obvious choice there. Chalice of the Void is all 3 are in the mix. Now we're going to be on the draw, so if we were on the play, we would want all 3 on the play. Since we're on the draw, I think all 3 is still viable. I think doing one on only one because we're on the draw is also viable, or the 2-1 split. Anything in there is justifiable. Now the reason for this is that even though Chalice is fantastic in our deck, we're not a Simian Spirit Guide deck. We're not a deck that can power this out ahead of curve. We are playing Chalice of the Void on curve, so the worse Chalice on 0 is in any given context, the less value the less value Chalice brings to the table. So of course play draw is crucial in evaluating how much value it's bringing, because they can dump out a bunch of 0 mana stuff before we have a chance to play Chalice if they are the ones on the play. So I think because we're looking at how to sideboard while on the draw. Right now we have 2 definites and 2 maybes. What else? What else? So, Extraction, no. Relic, no. Dispel and Negate, no. Hibernation, no. These are all pretty clear no's. Thing in the Ice is a pretty clear definite. This is the type of matchup, again, despite the fact that they're a little bit more grindy than average. We want to lower our curve, we want to race, and we also really value the bounce effect here. So for that reason, Thing in the Ice comes in, and for that reason, both Echoing Truths usually come in. Now, I'm just slightly leery about the second Truth here, more so than average. Because Affinity can rebuild the board really quickly. We're not really time-walking them at all with a Truth. We're just kind of, surviving. And I didn't see a Cranial Plating. I'm sure they still have it, but that's one of, not that plating itself is always the Truth target, but the plating progressions where they kind of go all in on something makes Truth a little bit more appealing. So for now, we've got that in the maybes. Let's get these out of the way, and let's see what is bad and what can come out. Ancestral Vision can come out. We want Chalice on 0, which is a non-bow, plus this is a slow, grindy card, so Ancestral Vision can come out. Howling Mine, even though we played it there and we live to tell the tale, that's also one we can look to cut. Remember that when we're on the Thing plan, we almost always want to cut 2 turn spells, which is usually to Part the Water Veil. It is just our clunkiest turn spell. Even though Temporal Mastery costs 1 more, the Miracle makes up for that, makes it a little less clunky than Part. So, when we're bringing in the things in the Truth package, Part the Water Veil ×2 usually comes out. We also usually want to cut a land. So these are all looking like pretty free cuts so far. Let's see where we're at. If we say we're definitely bringing in these 5, we're definitely cutting these 6. We can still bring in 1 of these for free without even looking at the rest of our deck. Jace is a little medium here. Yeah, Jace is not doing a ton for us. He's hard to protect. Let's take out the Jace. Let's just go all in on the Chalices, huh? Let's go in all in on the Chalices. Let's bring in the Truth, and like I said, remands are pretty bad. In fact, remands against normal Affinity are probably bad enough that I'd try to re-examine the sideboard and maybe remove another 1 or 2. However, against their grindier version, remand gets a little bit more valuable. Yeah, so I kind of like this. I kind of like the look of this 60. Let's sort by CMC just to give you the finalized look at things, and let us run it back. Okay, my friends, we are back for Game 2 against Affinity. Our hand is not really doing a whole lot of anything. We have our 2 worst turn spells. We can't even have the Time Warp. We have Exhaustion, which is kind of medium against the deck. It really depends on their sequencing in terms of how Exhaustion lines up. It's not one we can really rely on. We have Mikokoro, which is kind of a mine effect, but yeah, not very appealing. Our opponent keeps 7, and we mull to a 6 that only has 1 land. Can we keep this? Well, we have some stuff, and we have some bad cards. Once again, we have the double turn spell. That feels so bad when we're on 6. I don't think this deck mulligans all that well. Certainly compared to most monocolor decks, it doesn't mull all that well, and you're looking at why. However, Gemstone Caverns is extremely powerful. We do have Chalice, we do have a Serum Visions, and we do have a Tempo Play. Oh boy. We've got to keep it. And this always feels bad, right? When we're choked on mana and we see a non-blue source on top. I usually defer to keeping it just because we need to make our land drops, but man, does that ever feel mediocre. However, we're going to do it. We're going to take back the play. Gemstone Caverns is in. Temporal Mastery is out. Let's hope our opponent doesn't run us over. Inkmoth Nexus, Double Ornithopter, Mox Opal. Well, like I said in sideboarding, Chalice looks a lot better on the play when we're trying to set it on 0. Just look at that. That feels pretty bad. And the opponent gets a Vault Scourge down. Okay. There's our lovely suboptimal second land, and we go Serum. We draw Dictative Crufix. Okay. That's a fine card, but we are kind of still looking for more lands and other things. So we have Thing in the Ice and Exhaustion, huh? Thing is absolutely something we're interested in. It's one of our most realistic win conditions at this point. It's also a good defensive card. They've shown us Bomat Courier, so it actually can block, which is not always the case against Affinity. So by defensive, I mostly mean being able to flip it and bounce everything. Exhaustion in other progressions would be fine here, but right now we have to bottom it in search of lands. So that's what we'll do. We make our second land drop, and I do remember thinking for a while about this decision. We pretty much, no matter what, have to play Thing in the Ice next turn. So our Chalice, if we're trying to save it to play it on 1, gets worse and worse and worse. It's going to shut off our other Serum Visions too, which are fantastic draws with a clunky progression like this. And it's going to shut off our Ceremonious Rejection. So I thought for a while, feels bad, but we just going to run out the Chalice on 0, even though they just dumped out 3 0 cards. It's also worth noting that, you know, if they haven't shown us a Steel Overseer, but if they have a Steel Overseer type progression, we can buy some time with Echoing Truth, maybe even Stranding Ornithopters in their hand. So it's not all doom and gloom. We're going to pass. They're just going to animate, huh? Well, I can live with that. It's a strength of Affinity that they can really aggressively advance their win condition by just animating lands like this when they don't have much else to do. But the fact that they don't have much else to do is a good sign for us. That said, they did get another beater down. Alright, all we can do here is play Thing in the Ice and pass it back. They have a Galvanic Blast. I'm a little surprised to still see those in after side. Maybe that's not correct. I'm certainly no Affinity expert. But either way, we get blown out pretty hard by that, and they just get to turn all their weenies sideways. Fortunately, they still lack a payoff. They don't have a Lord, Master of Ethereum. They don't have Overseer. They don't have Plating. They don't even have Grafted War Gear. All things that I'm pretty happy about. Things that I'm not very happy about, drawing a Time Warp. That is awful. Pass the turn. Signal Pest. Okay, so they're starting to get a payoff. Not the scariest payoff, but definitely something that rewards them for being as wide as they are. So they're going to swing out. Now here I decided to Echoing Truth. Why did I do that? You know, next turn is going to be a better window to Echoing Truth, right? Because that's when they have the Signal Pest trigger. Well, that's definitely true. But if I am going to ever win this game, I need to find land drops ASAP. And if I find a land drop next turn or the turn after, I pretty much have no choice but to play the Dictative Crufix. I'm not going to win this game without a Mind Effect, even though it's going to give them the acceleration they might need to kill me. I still have to play it. So I'm playing to my outs, and my out right now is drawing an island off the top in the next turn or two. So if I'm playing to my out, I'm not going to cast the Truth for a few turns anyway, so it's time to use it and buy a little time. We bounce the Vault Scourges and we get to go again. And it's not a land, it's a Giga Drowse. Pretty poor. Passing it back. Opponent's going to fire it up. They're going to turn them all sideways. Signal Pest trigger putting in the work. So we're at 5 poison and 15 life. They're going to play a Signal Pest. Poor Vault Scourges have been forgotten in favor of the pests. Okay, we found a land, but is it too little too late? Still just gotta try to resolve the dictate. Take it from there. Fire up, Inky. Move to attacks. Yep, not gonna Giga Drowse anything just yet, because we are not dead on board. Double triggers, though, have been pretty painful here. So we're at 8 poison. One more swing like this and we're dead. They're also pressuring our life total, so we're not realistically going to be able to just keep them off of poison and still win. They've got a fast clock for regular damage now too. So Dictate, untap Snapcaster, and a land. Good, we needed the land. But we are still a little bit under the gun. Pretty obviously just have to pass here, see what they do, and try to make the best play possible, probably in their beginning of combat step. They find another land, they're going to animate the Inkmoth, and we are going to Giga Drowse in the beginning of combat. Snap Echoing Truth was also an option, but that leaves us dead to some other things. Giga Drowse is our best option. It makes sure we're not going to die against the poison this turn, and it also buys some decent time against the pressure on our life total. So Giga Drowse is the play of choice here, just tapping down their highest value attackers. They can't really do much except put the Vault Scourge back into play. And look at that. Look at that. We were dirtling, we were bricking, we did nothing. We interacted suboptimally several times with a below average Echoing Truth and a below average Giga Drowse. But we have a Mind Effect in play, and we hit a 5th land, and now we can Time Warp, and I'm telling you, this is just the threshold where things turn around. I really want you to keep that in mind if you're playing this deck. You always have outs as long as you have a Mind Effect down and as long as you can reach 5 mana. The Time Warp will get you back in the game. And that's what we're going to do. Obviously, just going to fire that right off. Move to our next turn. So we're continuing to make land drops. That is good. And here we're not going to get too cute. We are just going to keep pulling ahead. We're very happy to spend a part of the Water Veil to do so. At this point, we just need to keep accruing advantage and seeing what our top deck provides. Now, that was not great. We're not really trying to find another Mind Effect, but fortunately, Snapcaster Mage into Time Warp is still just so good for keeping the chain rolling, and that's our play. Okay, we find another Time Warp. Now, we are still far from deterministically going to win, and our opponent still has some real decisions to make in terms of what they think we have, whether making any blocks are good. This is the type of matchup where those decisions still matter, so for that reason, I'm going to pretty much always start out by getting in with a Snapcaster and forcing them to make a decision with as little information as possible. They choose to let him through. We choose to play our Time Warp because the card is amazing. And then we get to resolve another Dictate. Now, I complained about drawing that a turn or two ago, but man, does it feel pretty good to have double Mind Effect here going into turn 11. Unfortunately, we're drawing all of our chalices, which are kind of bad at this point in the game, but we have drawn other things that are decent. First thing we're going to do here is play the Jace. Now, we could just play it really safe and pass and have a Giga Drowse available for 7 on their turn, but if you think about it here, playing Jace lets us use our two colorless lands to resolve him, so we're really only making our Giga Drowse worse by 2. we have a lot of upsides to playing the Jace right now. We have the ability to find, off of Brainstorm, another Time Warp. That's the biggest upside. We can find Exhaustion. We can find more things that are really good. We can find Cryptic Command. We can find a lot of really good things, and we still have Giga Drowse for 5 if we find nothing good with Jace. We still have the Giga Drowse for 5, and we're making our future turns all the better. So that's pretty clearly our play. Now, I kind of violated my advice of last turn. I probably should have just gotten in with Snap first, but whatever. We've got the Jace. We're going to Brainstorm, and they're going to Galvanic Blast in response. So once again, you know, they left him in, and they're proving to be pretty good. I do wonder, though, if, you know, if they had pointed these at my face, you know, I would obviously still not be dead, but it would leave me dead to literal any attacker getting through. So, but anyway, I think they've used these at the right times on opportune targets. And maybe it's just good enough to leave in regardless, because it can go to the face, or it can go to stuff. You know, they didn't necessarily know I had Jace or Thing. I didn't show them either in game 1. And, yeah, maybe it's just a nice little catch-all for them. Regardless, they take care of the Jace. And we find some stuff. We find some pretty good stuff. We didn't find the Time Warp we were hoping for, but Exhaustion is probably the next best thing. And we also have Thing in the Ice, which is now a reasonable play. So we're going to put back our chalices, because we just don't need those. And yeah, it's Thing in the Ice time. Well, we thought about the Thing in the Ice anyway. Now we're going to take our own advice and get in with a Snapcaster before we show them anything else. We're going to play the Thing, and we're going to play the Exhaustion. That's just a little bit more proactive. We are not dead to anything I can think of, right? If we let them attack, maybe to double Galvanic Blast. But what are the odds they even have 4 in their 75, much less still in their deck, much less in their hand next turn? I think we're pretty safe to play Thing into Exhaustion. That is a more proactive line because it allows us to advance our win condition of Thing in the Ice by 2 spells. If we played the Giga Drowse, we're missing out on the Giga Drowse, and we're missing out on the Exhaustion this turn anyway. So Thing into Exhaustion is just our more proactive line. It's still almost as safe. I think the difference in safety there is negligible. Opponent gets to draw 3. They make a land drop. And they play in Soul Artifact. Now, I will be perfectly honest, that is something I forgot about. It's not a common Affinity card, but they did show it to me game 1. I should have been a little more wary of that. But, you know, they would I guess they would need another Mox Opal here into Galvanic Blast to kill me. But it just does increase the odds that they have a way to kill me there. So, something that I should have perhaps considered. We do get put to 3, and that's all they've got. All right. So we have nothing in hand, right? We've got nothing going on. But we do have a Serum Visions. That's a good place to start. It's advancing our win condition and giving us some more looks at potential outs. So Dictate for sure gets bottomed here. Cryptic Command is something that I believe I want. It's just a really safe card right now. You know, we are at a stage where we're dead to Galvanic Blast, though, even if we Cryptic them down. But there's no real way we can play around that card anyway at this point. It's just not realistic to be able to tap down all of their attackers and still play around a Galvanic Blast. So Cryptic is a fine one. That could get topped or bottomed. I think we topped it here. Dictate certainly goes to the bottom. There is our land drop. Gotta still get in with a Snapcaster. And we're going to pass. And now we are basically leaning here on the Giga Drowse. hoping it's good enough. They'll animate, they'll move 2 attacks, and it is time to Giga Drowse them all down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Notice here how we're careful to hit the manlands, because they did activate 1 manland in the main phase, but they could still, after this Giga Drowse resolves, activate the other 2 Blinkmoth Nexi, and we just don't want to take any damage here. Because of that, we have to leave their only attacker we don't care about up, which is an Ornithopter. Totally fine. Giga Drowse is a heck of a card in this deck. We are not able to hold up Ceremonious Rejection or Inkmoth Nexus, but that is Mikokoro, but that is okay. We get that Cryptic, we get an Island, we get an Exhaustion. Okay, looking pretty good. So once again, we're gonna send in the old Snappy. This time they're starting to get a little worried about their life total. They're gonna take the trade. I guess they have enough Signal Pests. Seems fine to throw 1 away. We'll exhaust them. And now there's no reason. So here I believe we thought about a Chalice of the Void, right? We thought about taking the window to resolve maybe a Chalice for 1 or a Chalice for 2. So let's say we resolved a Chalice for 2. We'd pay for it with Mikokoro. Not even Mikokoro necessarily. We could just pay with 4 islands. That still leaves us with Cryptic up, or we can have Ceremonious Rejection plus Mikokoro up. Ultimately, I decided that wasn't worth it. It's going to shut off some of our draws too. I think at this point we just accept that the Chalices have missed their window of opportunity, of opportune use, and we're just going to play it safe behind all of our counter magic. They're exhausted. Bomat Courier. Interesting. While this does not represent an immediate threat, I'm still pretty happy to just spend the rejection on it here. You know, again, it's a sequencing thing. We don't want to be reactive. We don't want to hold up counter magic anymore. So we're fine to make that trade for a haste creature. And they're going to Chalice check us. Admittedly, a very complicated board state, a lot of stuff going off, easy to forget. And they've got nothing. So on the end step, we're free to activate the Mikokoro and go again. We found a Time Warp, and our draws have been actually kind of bad in the late game, but we did find a Time Warp. So that is really kind of the bare minimum of what we needed there. There's plenty of other draws too, to be fair, but you know, like I like to say sometimes, we were really due for a Time Walk. We really were. Get in for 2. Opponent chooses not to block this time. Here comes the Time Warp. We'll activate Mikokoro. And now again, we could consider a Chalice, but at this point we're just planning not to let them go again, whether they're exhausted or whether they're just not getting another turn at all. And we're going to get the Dictate down. Now, it's worth noting our library is getting a little low, but we have the momentum and the velocity on our side. We are not likely to whiff long enough for that to matter. We still have a lot of turn spells in our deck. We still have other win conditions in our deck. And at this point, even Snapcaster can realistically get there. So we're happy to play the third Mine effect just for ultimate consistency. And we find a Part the Water Veil. And a Time Warp. Alright, we've just got it. You know, we've just got it here. We did it. Here comes the Part the Water Veil on the Inkmoth Nexus. And, you know, we're just getting in for regular damage. It really doesn't matter. We could have animated and made it infect. They only have an Ornithopter. They don't have anything. They are deterministically dead, even if they chumped the Inkmoth there, because we just swing for 8 next turn. We play a chalice just for style points. Our opponent makes us untap and draw. And we're just going to swing out. And the game has ended. We got there against Affinity. We got the 2-0 against Affinity. And we did it with a very dirtily draw game 1. And with a very sketchy mulligan to 6 game 2. Now, going back to the beginning of this game, that Gemstone Cavern was really clutch. Even though it put us even further down on cards than we already were, does not matter. The fact that it let us just accelerate on mana, even though we ended up breaking on lands for a little bit, that is the type of play, the type of advantage that we sometimes need to keep pace with these linear, aggressive decks of the format. It was kind of a strange game in that our hate cards didn't really pull their weight. You know, Chalice didn't seem to do much the first time we played it, and then the excess ones were clunking up our hand. In the mid to late game, Ceremonious Rejection just traded with a Bomat Courier just because we didn't even really need it to. Thing in the Ice as our alternative win con out of the side just got blasted immediately. So we ended up winning the old-fashioned way with, you know, some extra turn spells and an attack on turn 16. You know, our deck can still get there when we implement this pseudo-transformative plan out of the side. Please understand that it's not really changing the deck wholesale. It is just kind of, if you picture the velocity of the deck, the speed of it on a gradient, it's just kind of sliding the gradient more toward the faster side of the scale. That's about all it really does. We are still implementing our core strategy. We are still executing our core strategy of ramping into the late game with card advantage and then taking all the turns. So, pretty cool matchup. Pretty happy to pull off a 2-0 over Affinity. That said, our opponent's particular take on Affinity, the grindy stuff, did help us out a little bit. If they were a little bit more of the normal Affinity setup, we might have had a little bit more trouble keeping pace. That said, good games, well played to the opponent. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you for the next one. Have a good day.